And to begin with, I'm here in Spain to talk primarily with librarians about the future of libraries. And I came to tell my story, but actually the most interesting thing I've found so far is to listen to other people's stories, to find out what librarians are doing in Spain. And they're doing a lot of very interesting things. In the United States, in many cases, people are concerned about the status of libraries and what's going to be in the future, and perhaps they're even a little bit depressed about what the future of libraries might be in the United States. In Spain, I don't get that same sense. I get a sense of a lot of people, many of them younger, very interested in what's going to happen with libraries, and not only interested in what's going to happen, actually actively out there working to try to make a new future. I see a greater sense of optimism here for some reason, despite everything that Spain is dealing with, a greater sense of optimism about what might be in the future and what roles libraries might play in the future. So even though I came to tell my story, the most important thing that I found is to listen to other people's story and to see what actually is going on here, and I've been very impressed. All right, the question is, what are my thoughts on the future of reading? And I think of course, I don't pretend to have the answers, but I think there's some interesting questions here. And one of them is whether people will read everything electronically, or whether they'll continue to read things in print. And my sense, if they continue to read things electronically, there are going to be major differences in the way people get books. They probably won't need to go to physical libraries. They won't need to go to physical bookstores. They probably can go to Google or Amazon and simply press a button and read. There's good evidence that that people continue to want to read, and that there are more books being published every year now than what there ever have been in the past, and that people are reading more than they ever have been in the past. So if they read electronically, many of the physical things that we associate with reading, libraries and bookstores, are likely to go away, and we'll be able to get everything that we want off of an iPad or our e-reader, okay? But there's also some evidence that people don't want to read just electronically, that sometimes they like to read electronically, but other times they'd like to read things in print as well. And we can see some of the beginning evidence of this in the United States, where e-book adoption rates have actually dropped this year. Okay, so in other words, instead of doubling each year as they have for the past 2 to 3 years, the actual growth in e-book readership is only about 20 or 30% this year. So it looks like things might have reached a plateau. And there's some good evidence that the longer people have their e-readers, the more they buy both in print and electronically, meaning that people like both formats, and both formats have some advantages to them. And if that's true, then many of the physical places that we associate with books, meaning libraries and bookstores, okay, like La Central here in Madrid, will continue to have value. The physical place will continue to have value, and I think that's critical, because I think library, if it's all electronic, it's very likely that it's going to be Google or Amazon or somebody that is going to be providing that information. If it's physical, then you can have a La Central like bookstore here, like just open a big, huge bookstore, 75,000 titles, okay. And you also can have libraries, because we still need then the physical book. So I'm hoping that we really do have a hybrid world, that we're reading, where we both read electronically and physically, and that we continue to have libraries and bookstores, and also Amazon or wherever we need to go to get our electronic forms. That's my hope, and but the future will tell us, right? Well, in first place, I was born before the internet, so it's been interesting just to watch that develop, because it's had such a big effect on libraries. So we've seen some pretty incredible changes. First thing, when I first got into this business, it was just databases, and you had to dial them up, and that's the only thing you could do electronically, and you'd had to pay a lot of money for them too, right? Then, of course, the internet came along, and first it was really clunky and miserable, and the only thing it had was just a text interface, and you had email, and then there were a couple of things like gophers and the rest of it that most people don't even remember nowadays. Okay, then along came the web, and suddenly information changed, and databases and the rest of it that had all began to come into the web, and it became basically most people's library, where they went to find information. And of course, then in the last couple of years, we've had the social aspect of it, interaction, where instead of just searching for information, we're actually communicating back and forth on the internet. Then I think the thing that's interesting, and I heard yesterday about an interesting approach that Google, for example, says that in the future they expect to be out of the search business entirely, and what they are going to do is to try and predict what information people want in advance of their need, okay, and then make sure that that information is there when they need it, so the person doesn't have to search; it simply is in front of them when they need it. And I expect that with the right algorithms and with the Google engineers and all of the rest of the people that are working in this world, my guess is that something like that could easily happen. I think there's another thing that we should think about too, though, and that is sometimes as the internet becomes too dominant a force in our world, have things become too digital. And I'll give you an example. In the U.S., the Forest Service has an ad campaign called Unplug, pull the plug on electronic information. And their idea is that the kids and families and people in general are spending too much time in front of televisions and on their phones and playing video games and all the rest of it. And not that that isn't fine, but you can overdo that too, okay? So that sometimes you need to unplug those things and go out and, in this case, see the forest, all right? Or sit out in the sun where you don't have an electronic connection. My sense is that reading can be it has a similar element to that. In other words, a physical book in your hand is very much like being unplugged and being in a place where you're simply concentrating on the joy of reading or the information you're getting from that book. And even though I think we're only beginning to see the very initial reaction or initial kind of backlash developing against a world that maybe has become just a bit too digital. So I think one possibility, or my hope, is that perhaps we reach a little better balance between information and content that's electronic, and the outside world and print books where you can sit and just enjoy yourself without having an electronic connection. So I think those are two possible developments in the internet.